Hey everyone, welcome to another short edition of the Does It Hold Up podcast, where instead of talking about a movie, we want to talk about a theme from movies. Over the last 2 weeks, we have covered 1997's Titanic and 1987's The Princess Bride, two love stories that seem a little unrealistic. Would you say so?
Just a little.
Right. So today we want to cover how movies set up unrealistic expectations when it comes to romance and relationships.
Oh, yeah.
So, what are your initial thoughts before we start getting into actual movies and the problems? What are your initial thoughts when it comes to relationships and romance in film?
It's hard to portray an accurate relationship in movies because movies do what they do best and over dramatize everything. And unfortunately, I want to say that has an impact on people when they think of romance is, oh, well, I need a romance like I see in the movies. And that's not necessarily attainable for everyone.
Absolutely. And it's not just movies, it's everywhere. We focus obviously on movies. We're a movie-based channel, a movie-based podcast. But you can see it in things like comic books and TV shows as well. I mean, Joker and Harley Quinn is something that springs to mind immediately when people talk about romance that they want but don't quite understand. Because that's a toxic, super toxic relationship, and yet people glorify it because it's been glorified to them. Mm-hmm. That undying devotion, do everything together, do anything for each other. And there's a lot of movies that showcase things like that as well. The first movie that I really want to talk about, because it hits a lot of different things, is The Notebook. Now, this is a love story about a man named Noah who is in love with whatever her name is, and he's super problematic. And yet everybody roots for him, and this is a super old movie, so spoiler alert anyway, but they do end up together, and they grow old together, and that's like the surprise at the end. But I'm not sure how they get there, because here's a list of things that this man does throughout the movie to win his love. He stalks her, always knows where she is, tries to show up where she is. In fact, to get the initial date, he scales the outside of a Ferris wheel at a carnival to reach her car so that he can ask her out.
What?
Too much. He ruins her relationship. After they date for a little while, they realize they might not actually be that good together. So they break up. She meets another guy and gets engaged. But he ruins that every single chance he gets. He does not care about her other relationships. He clearly never moves on from her. He's obsessive over her. He builds an entire house hoping that's what will win her back because it was like their dream house. So he builds it by himself, by hand. Listen, that's never going to happen in real life.
I was gonna say, you can try and DIY that all day long, but no.
And the last thing he does, and he does a ton of things, but the last thing I want to touch upon is he mentions how he wrote her a letter every single day for a year. 365 letters. And in the movie, it works. Somewhat. But at the end of the day, like, does anything about that scream, I should marry this guy or be with this guy to you?
No.
If a guy did all that stuff for you, what are your thoughts on that?
I would probably be just weirded out, honestly. I'd be like, number one, you're dumb. You could have just waited for me to get off the Ferris wheel. You didn't have to climb it. Like, that's not safe or right. I'd have been like, you might need some help. Let me change my number and move. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that seems more like you should get a restraining order more than you should fall in love. But the problem is, when that movie came out, it set standards that men basically had to live up to, but unfortunately in the real world, that stuff doesn't play well. That screams stalker, creep. That's the kind of stuff that would get men in trouble with women. And yet the movie plays it like that's what you have to do. And to be honest, I knew some women when that movie came out who were expecting something like that, who wanted something like that to happen. Like, if you didn't write them a letter every single day, you were nothing. You did not matter anymore.
I've actually never watched this movie. I didn't care for the idea of it. But I knew so many people that were like, oh my God, The Notebook. It's so romantic. And I'm just like, sure. And after hearing all the things that he does, I'd have been like, no.
And there is more that he does. These are just some of the bigger ones. And how much could that just mess stuff up? Imagine if I met a woman or you met a man, and all of a sudden he follows you around a carnival to then approach you while you're in the middle of a ride to ask you out. Then can't let go of you. You moved on. You went to another man. He writes you letters every day. He builds a house. He calls you. He stalks you. Somehow you end up with him. It doesn't make any sense. In a movie, sure. In real life, though, you're ending up in jail. Let's just be honest here. You're a woman. You don't want that, right?
No. If we broke up, we're done. Like, don't ruin my future relationships. Like, that is toxic as heck. I would have gotten a restraining order at that point.
Absolutely. All right. So I know you brought a movie you wanted to talk about as well. That was kind of what I wanted to touch upon, get us really started by talking about The Notebook a little. But what's a movie that you brought to the table that has problems?
For me, one that it looks cute on the face value, but when you look deeper into it, it gets a little creepy, is 50 First Dates.
Ooh.
I actually really enjoy this movie. I have a lot of fun watching it, but it's the idea of this person constantly trying to interact with this woman who will not remember him, basically. And her family has expressed the idea, don't do this is just wrong. And yet he continually does it.
Yeah.
It also sets up a crazy example of, like, you have to make someone fall in love with you every single day. Like, in a relationship, you have to do stuff extreme enough to
win the love
every single day. And
yeah.
It's like, that is not gonna happen.
Yeah, I've seen this movie as well, and although it's super cute, again, it works in the movie world. It doesn't work in the real world because that's just... Okay, so there's actually laws against things like this. You know, dating the mentally challenged or people with disabilities. There's laws against that. You have to, like, circumvent a whole bunch of stuff to actually make it work. So this movie just is problematic on that aspect. But you're going against her wishes. You're going against her family's wishes. And normal people don't have time to dedicate hours a day to be like, hey, you forgot me yesterday, but I'm going to make you fall in love with me again.
Yeah.
If
I will be here every single day to make you fall in love with me and then spend every single day with you, even though somehow I have a job and a hobby.
Well, I guess that works, though, because she'll never remember that you have a job. So if you don't see her one day, she won't know.
Yeah.
So you won't get clingy. But it is super unrealistic. It's... Other people have their own lives, meaning I can't make my entire life about you and falling in love with you or getting you to fall in love with me. Once we meet, if we fall in love, that's it. We fall in love. There's going to be highs. There's going to be lows. We are going to fight. We are going to know that we continue to love each other even through those fights. But I can't do these big things every day to get you to fall in love with me. It's just not plausible. Yet, there's probably people out there who went, I wish I had a relationship like 50 First Dates. And he just made me fall in love with him all over again.
Yeah, and having that idea of constantly being available and having your entire life be about that other person. I've known people that are like, oh my God, he didn't text me back within like 5 minutes. He must not love me. And it's like, no, the person's probably at work or doing something with their lives other than having it revolve around you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's ruining a lot of relationships now.
Absolutely. I've been in a relationship where it was text back right away, or we're going to fight because clearly you don't care anymore. And it's like, but I have other things going on. But this movie doesn't make it seem like that's possible. You
Yeah.
have to be available 24/7, big things every day. I just don't get it. Another movie I want to talk about is Love Actually. And guys, we know there's going to be a ton of movies out there with other examples. These are just some we wanted to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Love Actually is a movie all about different romances happening, but there's a few parts to it that really are weird. One of the things that always bothers me in these types of movies is the airport scenes. There's always a scene, this is a cliche going back to like the 80s, where the love of your life is getting on an airplane, so you have to go to the airport, run through it, catch up to them, confess your feelings. They're going to reciprocate. You're going to be together. A happy ending. Listen, the idea of your partner or the person you're interested in leaving and you have to somehow convince them to stay isn't plausible. It doesn't make sense. Sure, you can have a conversation or two, but to give up a day to go physically try to stop them is unrealistic.
Yeah.
And it's also creepy. One, you're going to spend a lot of money on a movie ticket. You're going to spend a lot of money on a plane ticket you're not going to actually use. You're going to spend tons of time getting through airport security, trying to find what plane they're actually on so that you can get to that gate. And me personally, I don't like big, huge public displays of affection. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. Don't put that on somebody. It only works in the movies. Don't expect, well, I said no to him and I'm leaving. I expect him or her to run after me and stop me from going. Don't expect that.
It's super unrealistic. The idea of, number one, going to an airport and just being able to, like, get in there. In fact, I actually really appreciate that a lot of media more recently makes it more a joke because they realize that's not really possible anymore. So good luck with that. But I do hate the idea of the big romantic gesture and having to throw yourself out there in public to proclaim your love, and that will get you the guy or the girl. No. Yeah. Half the time you'll just embarrass the other person. Like, watch most of the, like, proposal videos online you see of them just getting rejected and how embarrassing that is. And it's like, you did this huge romantic gesture in public and it just backfired. And it was just like, no. I probably would have said yes in a different setting, but in this kind of setting, no, I'm like freaking embarrassed.
Or you get those ones, there's been stories of they'll say yes in public and later rescind that yes because they felt pressured to do so. And one thing you don't want to start a relationship under is pressure. You don't want to be like, well, I'm pressuring you into either saying yes or no right this second.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to set up a healthy relationship going forward. Yeah. What's the next movie you would like to bring up? Oh, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt one time?
Yes.
I actually had one more thing to say just really quickly about Love Actually. There's a scene in which a gentleman shows up at a woman's door and he has big giant cue cards, poster board that he wrote on, and he pulls them down one by one while she reads them while her entire family is inside having dinner. And it seems like a really great, grand, romantic gesture, but it's not. Don't interrupt her time to do something like that. Don't have her re-cue. If you want to say something, just say something. Nothing about that is romantic, and most people aren't going to stand there with the door open in cold weather to read these cards. They're either going to say, tell me right now what you want, or leave. That's not realistic, and most men won't do that. Don't expect it.
Quit killing the trees for this stupidness.
Just say what you want to say. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What was your next movie you wanted to bring up?
My next movie I want to bring is The Proposal.
Okay.
And this one I really want to bring forward is the idea of starting off hating each other and ending up loving each other.
Oh, yes.
This is a trope that a lot of, especially rom-coms, like to use, and I love this trope. Like, trust me, most of my favorite rom-coms are based on this trope, but I realize that it's not a great thing to portray because you don't want to be like, oh, I really hate this person, but maybe I just secretly like them. No, you probably don't like the person, and they probably don't like you. Like, quit having that expectation of like an extreme emotional response must mean love. No. And that makes a lot of people stay when they probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I
That's
I agree. It also happens in movies like not 10 Things I Hate About You. Although that is the case as well, because Kat does not like, I can't remember Heath Ledger's character's name right now, but they don't like each other at first, and he keeps pursuing her until they develop a relationship somehow. But the movie I actually wanted to bring up was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. The whole premise of this is two people meeting, having a bet saying how fast they can make the other one break up with them. So they do all the worst possible things. They absolutely can't stand each other. Yet somehow that turns into love. Listen, if you have an enemy, if you don't like somebody, don't count on that turning into some romantic feelings. They always say there's a fine line between love and hate, but trust me, that line is very clear. Very clear.
Don't keep pursuing someone when they've clearly shown that they just don't like you.
Yes. If there's some kind of dislike between the two of you, unless it's on a superficial level, like you dislike each other because you like different sports teams or something like that. But if there's a deep dislike, let it go. It's not going to happen. One quick movie I wanted to bring up, and then I want to bring up a bunch of scenarios to you and get your kind of thoughts on them that happen in movies, is Romeo and Juliet. And I know this is an old Shakespeare play, but it's been adapted into movies quite a few times, particularly 1996's Romeo and Juliet starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. But the idea behind their love being like, we're from two different paths and we need to come together, that alone doesn't happen all that often. Because how are you going to meet? But the idea that they are willing to die for a love that they don't 100% know and feel. And again, it's like that toxic relationship between Joker and Harley Quinn. Don't be willing to die for the other person unless you've been together for like a long time, I can say. Like, I don't know better how to understand Romeo and Juliet meeting, and 3 days later she's ready to fake her death to be with him, and he's ready to just die for her.
Because she died.
Because she fake died.
Yeah.
Also, don't pull off fake deaths. Guys, women, nobody, do that.
Luckily, that's not a thing that really has to get done anymore, but still.
Yes, exactly. It always bothered me, that story. I love the idea of romance. Rom-coms are my favorite genre of movie. I laugh at them all the time. I love watching them. There's just so much wrong. And here's a couple things that happen in these movies all the time, and I want your opinion on them and how you think they ruin actual relationships. Kissing in the rain.
I don't think I've ever done it, so I don't have strong feelings on this one. So
I have done it. It's not romantic in any way. The movies always make it look good because they have rain machines, the water's warm, they're
acting.
controlled circumstances, and they're acting. In real life, it's hard to breathe when you're soaked in water and you're kissing at the same time. You get wet, you get cold. It's awkward when you go inside and you're like, nah, I gotta go change. Like, there's nothing sexy about it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't expect it. If a guy's like, if you're like, hey, to your partner, want to go kiss in the rain, and they say no, don't get offended. It's not romantic.
It's not all it's cracked up to be, apparently.
It is definitely not. The fact of BFFs, best friends, being your actual love, that happens a lot in movies. And in real life, usually a best friend stays a best friend. I had female best friends growing up that never turned into a romantic thing because you're best friends. That doesn't automatically mean you're going to be good as a couple. So what are your thoughts on best friends becoming the romantic interest?
So while it doesn't always happen, like it doesn't happen very often in real life, I actually don't mind it as much, as long as in real life you're kind of upfront. You're like, hey, we're best friends. I don't see us really going anywhere. I don't think of you in that way. But what I like about showing those kind of relationships in movies is because it's showing off the idea of this is someone you are comfortable around. This is someone that makes you feel like you can be yourself in front of them. And unfortunately, a lot of movies don't like show you having to really work for your relationship rather than being comfortable in a relationship. So I kind of think that's a good thing to show. Just also know that it's not something to expect in real life. If you have a best friend, don't expect them to finally realize that you were the one all along. It doesn't always happen that way.
Good points. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to unrealistic expectations is not just the romantic side, the dating side, but the actual sexual side. Because movies tend to want to showcase sex as this perfect, sensual, clean type of act. But we all know, or if you don't know, you will discover that it's nothing like that. It's not perfectly, oh, we went out and had a few drinks, and as soon as we walked in the door, I got slammed up against the wall, and they slowly undressed me with perfect timing and precision, and then escorted me to the bed, and we've been making out this entire time, even though that's super awkward at times. And then it's over, it's done with, there's no mess, you're just connected as one. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's not how sex works. There might be instances of it, but overall, especially in a relationship or especially the first time with someone, it's not going to be like that.
It's likely going to be awkward. You're not always going to do things perfectly. In fact, it's almost better when you can like kind of laugh at yourself or like trying to undress sexy and it's like, oh god, no, okay, well that got caught on my head. So don't expect things to be like magical, especially the first time, but it's almost better when it's not. I think.
And if your partner's not perfect that first time, if you don't get the movie scene romance in that moment, don't get mad. Don't be like, well, we have to break up, they're terrible. Because that's not real life. Real life is messy. It's funny. There's weird things happening, especially the first time. You're trying to find that rhythm with the other person. You're trying to connect to that other person. Just let it play out.
You don't know what the other person likes, what they prefer, what they don't like. So it's like grow together as a couple.
Yes.
Rather than calling it quits right away because it wasn't movie magic.
Exactly. Is there any other types of things you've seen in romantic movies that you want to address?
Finding romance in traumatic events. So things like Speed have this in it where it's like something crazy is happening and suddenly at the end of the movie they're like, oh well, we're in love now.
Yep.
You can find romance in traumatic events, just don't always expect that romance to stay that way. Movies make it look so good because you're getting the snippet of their life. You're not getting their entire life. So we covered Titanic recently, and we talked about that quite a lot, actually, is would they have stayed together had he not passed away in the sinking of the Titanic? And it's like, we don't know. We got to see this fairy tale romance that everyone looks up to, but would it have continued? We don't know. So don't necessarily bank everything. Like if you're going through something really traumatic and you meet a person, don't necessarily think that that's how your guys are going to continue.
Yep. And it's okay to find love in a traumatic event. It's especially okay to deepen a love through a traumatic event. If you are in a relationship and a traumatic event happens and you find yourselves connecting more, becoming closer, that is more likely to happen than finding somebody through that event.
Yeah.
And just understand that if you go through something, if you, God forbid, are on a bus and it's in a big accident or something, don't look at the person next to you and just go, hey, should we be together now? Traumatic events don't make relationships, no matter how many times you see it in movies.
Yeah. You got to have something other than just the shared trauma.
Absolutely. So overall, guys, what we're trying to say is don't rely on the movies to tell you how a romantic relationship or any relationship of any kind should happen, figure it out for yourselves. Decide what you like, what you're looking for, and what you want, and then seek a person who fits majority of those things, because no one will fit all things. But you want to find somebody close. But don't put on your list, well, we have to survive the Titanic together. He has to build me a house and write me letters every day. He has to show up at the airport when I'm leaving. Don't write those things down. Write things down that are more realistic, because everything you see in the movies cannot and most likely will not happen.
And always keep communication open. Like, if these are things that you are expecting in a relationship, make that known. Make it available to that other person that these are your expectations.
Yep.
And let's work on that together and be like, okay, those are your expectations. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fulfill all of them, but I can fulfill most of them. Have a balance there. If it's worth fighting for, you will make some sacrifices, if you want to call them that.
Yes. And don't ever end a relationship just because they don't do the thing you saw in the movie. We can't all be Magic Mike. We're not getting undressed and dancing for you and being completely cut. Unfortunately, we would love to be, but we all aren't. Mm-hmm. All right. That was it. Let us know in the comments below what you think about unrealistic romance in movies. If we missed any certain moments in movies that really stand out to you, or other tropes that you know about. In the meantime, you can also follow us over on Twitter at doesitholdup13. Check out our TikTok, doesitholdup_ between each word. Comment below, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, keep watching movies.